After World War II, most of the world was left in ruin. Europe and East Asia in particular suffered some of the worst atrocities and devastations seen by mankind. Among the developed world, there was one major country that was unaffected by the war, lucky America. This allowed America to become the global hegemon and dominate the landscape of world politics, economics, and military. However, recent developments, particularly under President Donald Trump's administration, have signaled a shift towards a more multipolar global order. This video examines how Trump's insane tariff policies and trade wars have contributed to the erosion of US dominance, while exploring the concurrent rise of other global powers and blocs such as China, the European Union, BRICS, and ASEAN. There are three key Trump policies that highlight the erosion of American hegemony. They are tariffs and protectionism, withdrawal from multilateral agreements, and undermining global trade institutions. President Trump's approach to international trade has been marked by a significant departure from traditional US policies. His administration imposed sweeping tariffs on various countries, most notably China. These tariffs, reaching up to 145% on certain Chinese goods, were intended to address trade imbalances and protect American industries. However, they have also led to retaliatory measures from affected nations, disrupting global supply chains and increasing costs for consumers. A baseline of 10% was applied to all nations, even those who buy more from the US, which makes his whole argument about wanting trade to be fair a bit stupid. He has already conceded on some tariffs, pausing them for 90 days and exempting them from smartphones and computers. But it's too late. China has just secured a new trade deal with Spain and Vietnam, both stating that the US is now unreliable and preferring China's stability and sensibility. And there are many more nations lined up to sign deals with China for the exact same reason. In addition to imposing tariffs, the Trump administration withdrew from several key multilateral trade agreements. Notably, the US exited the Trans-Pacific Partnership and renegotiated the North American Free Trade Agreement, now known as the United States-Mexico-Canada Agreement. These actions have diminished the U.S. influence in shaping global trade norms and have prompted other nations to seek alternative partnerships. This is basically a death sentence for American hegemony when you realize that other groups such as BRICS contain more than half the world's population and GDP. Oh, and they also hate America. The administration's stance has also weakened international institutions designed to facilitate trade. By challenging the World Trade Organization and its dispute resolution mechanisms, the United States has contributed to the erosion of a rules-based trading system. This has led to increased uncertainty in global markets and has encouraged other countries to consider alternative frameworks for trade and economic cooperation. China's rapid economic growth has positioned it as a central player in the global economy. As the world's second-largest economy, with a mighty GDP of $18.5 trillion, China has expanded its influence through initiatives like the Belt and Road Initiative, which aims to enhance trade and infrastructure connectivity across Asia, Africa, and Europe. China's growing economic clout has been accompanied by increased political and military assertiveness, challenging the traditional dominance of Western powers. They have the largest army and navy in the world and are still building up their capabilities. China also manufactures over 30% of the world's goods and is the biggest trading partner for over 120 countries. Talk about hegemony. Maybe China will soon rule the world. The EU has sought to assert its strategic autonomy in response to perceived unpredictability in US foreign policy. Efforts to strengthen internal cohesion and external partnerships have been central to this strategy. For instance, the EU has advanced trade agreements with countries like Canada and Japan, and has intensified negotiations with India and ASEAN members. These initiatives aim to diversify the EU's trade relationships and reduce dependence on any single power. They are a highly developed and educated region but lack the natural resources to do anything, which is why they trade heavily with the Middle East for oil and China for electrical goods. Now they will trade less with the US, especially when it comes to military equipment. The BRICS group, comprising 10 full members and many more partner nations and applicants waiting for approval, has evolved into a significant counterbalance to Western-dominated institutions. With the inclusion of countries like Indonesia, the BRICS Plus coalition now represents a substantial portion of the global population and economic output. Initiatives such as the New Development Bank and the Contingent Reserve Arrangement have provided alternatives to Western-led financial institutions, offering emerging economies greater influence in global economic governance. China, the chief economic power in BRICS, has also created a new financial system involving the digital yuan that can bypass the SWIFT system. The Association of Southeast Asian Nations, or ASEAN, has maintained a central role in regional diplomacy and economic integration. By promoting non-alignment and fostering cooperation among its members, ASEAN has navigated the complexities of US-China rivalry. Countries like Indonesia and Vietnam have pursued independent foreign policies, balancing relations with major powers while prioritizing regional stability and economic growth. ASEAN has a GDP of over $4 trillion and is growing at a rapid speed. India must be jealous that it's being overshadowed by ASEAN. The combination of protectionist trade policies and the withdrawal from multilateral agreements has diminished America's standing as a global leader. Traditional allies have expressed concerns over the reliability of American commitments, leading them to seek alternative partnerships and frameworks for cooperation and establish their own military-industrial complexes instead of relying on America's. The combination of protectionist trade policies and the withdrawal from multilateral agreements has diminished America's standing as a global leader. Traditional allies have expressed concerns over the reliability of American commitments, leading them to seek alternative partnerships and frameworks for cooperation and establish their own military-industrial complexes instead of relying on America's. This shift reflects a broader trend towards a more decentralized and multipolar global order. In response to the changing dynamics, regional blocs have gained prominence. The EU's efforts to enhance strategic autonomy, BRICS's expansion, and ASEAN's active diplomacy illustrate a move towards greater regional self-reliance. Even the African Union are getting some deals in with China and BRICS. These developments suggest a future where global governance is characterized by a network of interconnected regional powers, each asserting its interests and influence. The fragmentation of global leadership poses challenges for addressing transnational issues such as climate change, pandemics, and cybersecurity. Without a central authority to coordinate responses, international cooperation may become more cumbersome and less effective. The emergence of competing power centers necessitates new approaches to global governance that accommodate diverse interests and perspectives. The UN was meant to be such an organization, but it's actually a useless and feckless bureaucracy of do-nothings. The end of American hegemony is not a sudden event, but an inevitable and gradual shift influenced by changing policies and the rise of alternative power centers. However, President Trump's flip-flop foreign and trade policies have accelerated this transition, prompting other nations to reassess their alliances and strategies. As the global order becomes more multipolar, the challenge will be to foster cooperation among diverse powers while managing competition and conflict. The future of global governance will depend on the ability of nations to navigate this complex landscape and build inclusive, resilient institutions. If you enjoyed this video, then please like, comment, and subscribe. Thanks for watching.